Dear friends, I welcome you on the channel. Today we will go on an exciting journey through the life and ideas of one of the greatest minds of the 20th century, Erwin Schrödinger. His name is familiar to everyone who at least once heard about quantum physics, and the famous mental experiment with a cat has become a symbol of the science of micromere. But few people know that behind strict formulas and equations hid a man who seriously thought about the nature of the soul and immortality of consciousness. Erwin Schrödinger was born in 1887 in Austria, in a family where the atmosphere of science and art reigned. His father was a botanist and amateur chemist, and his mother came from a family where culture and philosophy were appreciated. From an early age, the boy grew among books, conversations, and scientific experiments. He showed curiosity to the structure of the world, but at the same time, he was never limited only to numbers and formulas. Even then, he was interested in philosophy, and later, the ancient texts of the East. Studying in Vienna opened before him the world of modern science. The young Schrödinger was carried away by physics, especially when the physical world began to ruin the usual laws. The classic mechanics, which Newton admired, ceased to explain the phenomena in the micromere. At the turn of the century, a new science was born, quantum mechanics. It was in this area that Schrödinger left his main mark. In 1926, he created an equation that still bears his name. It describes how particles behave at the quantum level. This equation became the foundation of modern physics and brought it world fame. But at the same time, the more deeply he plunged into the micromere, the more he realized the reality is arranged much more mysterious than it seems. One of his most famous contributions was a mental experiment with a cat. Imagine, the cat is in a closed box, inside a device associated with the decay of the atom. If the atom breaks up, the cat will die. If not, it will survive. According to the laws of quantum mechanics, until we open the box, the cat is in a state of both living and dead at the same time. It sounds absurd, but this is how the world of elementary particles works. For Schrödinger, this paradox was not just a game of mind. He showed that reality is connected with the observer. Without the participation of consciousness, it is impossible to determine in what state the system is. And this means that consciousness is not a byproduct of matter, but a key element of the universe. This thought gradually led him to philosophical issues. He began to seriously study the Indian Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita. Ancient texts claimed, in every person there is an eternal part, an Atman that is identical to universal consciousness, Brahman. The individual I is only an illusion, but in reality all creatures are connected in one source. Schrödinger admitted that these ideas had a huge impact on him. He wrote that he does not believe that every person has a separate, closed I. In his opinion, there is only one consciousness that manifests itself in millions of bodies, like an ocean divided into drops. So in his scientific work and philosophy, an amazing picture began to form. The world is not just a set of atoms and particles. This is a single whole in which the mind plays a fundamental role. Over the years, Schrödinger wrote more and more about the fact that death is not an end. Yes, the body leaves, the activity of the brain stops. But what we call consciousness cannot disappear. It is forever, how the world itself is eternal. These ideas did not remain only in personal notes. Schrödinger openly expressed that consciousness is immortal, although he understood that the scientific community would meet his words with distrust. He did not talk about paradise or hell, did not draw pictures of posthumous existence. For him, the immortality of the soul meant that the true I did not depend on the body. It is one, and each of us is only a temporary manifestation of this great whole. In 1944, his famous book, What is Life?, was published. In it, he considered the question of the nature of the living from the point of view of physics. This book had a huge impact on future biologists and actually anticipated the discovery of the DNA structure. But at the end of the book, he carefully remarked, even if we explain the mechanisms of heredity, the secret of consciousness will remain. And the solution to this secret goes beyond science, into the field of philosophy. It was obvious to Schrödinger, the personality was dying, but consciousness remains. He wrote, "The world is me." This is not a poetic metaphor, but it's belief. The whole variety of forms of life is one and the same consciousness that never disappears. These views brought him closer to the philosophy of the East. He compared science and Upanishads, trying to show that their conclusions are surprisingly close to each other. Science told him about the unity of the world at the level of physics, and ancient texts affirmed the same thing at the level of the spirit. Of course, many colleagues were skeptical of this. For them, Schrödinger was a brilliant physicist, the author of the equation that changed the world. But his arguments about the immortality of the soul seemed too courageous. Nevertheless, this is what makes his personality unique. He was not afraid to look further than the usual boundaries of science. Until the end of his life, he continued to give lectures, write articles, reflect on the nature of consciousness. Even having survived the war in difficult times, he did not lose interest in these issues. In his eyes, it was visible that special calm which happens among people who believe in eternity. Schrödinger passed away in 1961, but his ideas are still inspired not only by physicists, but also by philosophers, psychologists, as well as everyone who is looking for answers to questions about what awaits us outside of ordinary experience. The story of Erwin Schrödinger reminds us, even the most stringent scientists cannot bypass the theme of the immortality of the soul. Perhaps it is in the combination of science and philosophy that the key to understanding our true I is hidden. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you are close to such topics, subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts in the comments, and support the project. Your opinion is very important, and there are still many amazing stories about the secrets of consciousness and the universe ahead of us. See you, friends.